Welcome everyone to this very special NIM node operator town hall, and also remember the 5th of November. It happens to be the International Guy Fawkes Night. So I don't know if you timed it with this in mind, Jaya. Was it intentional?
Absolutely.
Okay,
It's tradition for them to do something on Guy Fawkes.
exactly. We launched the first shipyard, if you remember, Shipyard Academy. We launched on Guy Fawkes Night. All right, folks. So there's some pretty important stuff to discuss. As you know, we're headed into the last month before launching in VPN, and obviously there's quite a bit of stuff to discuss on the operator front. Before we do that, big thanks to everyone for joining us today. Hope you brought your questions. If you did, you can leave them in the chat at any point during the conversation. And there are going to be two sections to today's presentation. One is going to be done by Jaya and the other by Serinko. But first, I have to actually introduce myself and the guests. So I'm Sudo, aka Simon. I'm your host for tonight, and I have with me Jaya, who hopefully needs no introduction. How's it going, Jaya?
Very good, very good. Happy to finally be doing this. Oh, I think we lost Sudo.
You lost me for a second. Sorry about that, guys. And I also have with me another person who hopefully needs no introduction to anyone in the NIM node operator community, our DevRel, Serinko. How is it going, sir?
Hello, very good. Just to finish up where you started, it goes: gunpowder, treason, and plot. I see no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot.
Exactly. Excellent.
Let's go.
Now, before we get started, I wanted you guys to quickly walk people through what the presentations are going to be today. Want to say a few words, Jaya?
Sure. So this is effectively the second operator town hall. So those of you who've been with us over the past year will remember that we did a first operator town hall early this summer, where we talked a little bit about the kind of vision for the fully fledged reward system of around running a NIM node. More specifically, we were talking about how gateways are going to be rewarded and included in the active set. So I'm very happy that we've finally now arrived to the point of implementation for that vision. There's a lot of detail around that implementation that we need to kind of convey quite carefully to all of you. So I just want to flag that you're going to be getting a lot of information over the course of this call. Don't be too worried. We are going to allow for plenty of questions. We're going to send out a summary and the slides after the call, so you can deep dive in your own time as well. That's the aim of this call, is basically to give all of you a heads up on the upcoming changes to the NIM token economics and reward system over the next few months.
How about you, Serinko? What did you bring us for today?
I'm gonna be talking a little bit about breaking changes, because if we do make it, we need to break it a little bit. And what else we're gonna be talking about? Remembering Guy Fawkes. So a little bit on the API side. I'm not gonna go too deep. So for the devs and different builders around, or just like very curious technical community, there will be documentation. I'll also link a PR, which is well described already. It's gonna be mostly for operators. What does that mean for them? And then how we bootstrapping the NIM network and the mixnet, right? Because we need you all operators, and we might also be helpful for you all in exchange. So some ideas about how to go forward in getting the network really robust before the users come in massive,
I also think that someone should post a link to a Guy Fawkes night in the chat so people understand what we're talking about. It's a very UK tradition. So
I'll do that in a second. But with all of that said, we're a bit late already, so maybe let's get started with the presentation. I will share my screen. And Jaya, take it away.
Okay, good. Yeah, so welcome to the second NIM node town hall. The agenda for today is rewards update, the completion of Project Smoosh, the upcoming changes to our grants, and of course, breaking changes, as Serinko mentioned. Next slide. So the structure of this presentation is I'm going to be speaking for the first about 15 to 20 minutes. First, giving a very brief overview of the state of NIM token economics now and how the upcoming changes to rewards help actually implement the full vision of the NIM token economics, what those upcoming changes actually look like in some detail, and then a kind of a little bit of a high-level overview of the vision for NIM token economics and NIM rewarding down the line. After that, I'll take a few questions on that part of the presentation before handing over to Sarinko, who will go a little bit more in depth in a lot of the stuff that I've covered, talking about how some of these changes will be implementing some breaking changes as well, and key information for you guys as operators of what you're going to need to do next. Next slide, please. So first of all, in terms of NIM token economics, we've got, I think it's important to understand that the token economics in its current state is in a little bit of a kind of bootstrapping phase still, and it has been ever since the token economics went live. So what do we mean by bootstrapping? We mean that it's a kind of like the startup phase, let's say, of the token economics. So far, importantly, the network usage has been free. This is very important because we have, a very new technical system here. So in order to get interest, we need to allow for free usage for a period of time so that, other projects that want to integrate or, people wanting to use an MVPN can see how this new system actually functions without having to pay for it up front. This is going to be changing, of course. We're moving into a paid version of our infrastructure. And that effectively closes the loop on the NIM token economics and means that the whole system starts having real value internally. The other issue that we've had so far is that gateways have obviously been subsidized via grants, and they have not been included in the reward set, so that also needs to change. Because gateways have been subsidized by grants, their numbers have been limited. So we have had a limited supply of gateways, which this also effectively needs to change because as we see more and more users, we're going to see an increasing demand for gateways. Rewards have also not fully been matching contribution. So what we've actually seen in the network is that there's a number of outdated nodes that continue to get rewarded. So what we have to see happen over the next few changes is that outdated nodes get culled from the active set, so they're no longer getting rewards from those who are actually up to date and running a good service. And finally, a pain point for not just node operators, but our overall community, the NIM token has been diminishing in value, and this is largely due to an oversupply of NIM tokens in the market that's not currently matching the demand for network services, which is a kind of economic correction that we need to be implemented. So the good news is that we are fixing all of these things. The good news is that NIMVPN is going live and is going live very, very soon. And that this effectively closes the cycle in the NIM token economics, and we can start to see that flywheel effect and a kind of virtuous cycle where rewards start to match real-world network usage and token actually serves real-world demand. Next slide, please. If I'm going too fast for anyone, please do shout in the chat. I can speak slower as well. So brief overview of the upcoming changes that we're going to see in the next few weeks and months. Already now, I'm very excited to announce that we have launched a NIM token buyback. So that's to correct for the oversupply of the NIM token in the market. So, in terms of economics, that means we're restricting supply. That should start to see a kind of normalizing of the valuation of the NIM token so that it starts to kind of become increasingly tied to real world adoption of the NIM VPN and NIM network. By doing this token buyback, which effectively means, us, the company, buys a lot of tokens in the market, we're also going to see a boosted treasury. So we'll have a much larger NIM token treasury, and we can use that to boost the Delegations program, but also marketing activities around the NIM VPN. I'm also very happy to announce that today we have a brand new operator webpage and brand new operator docs that have come out. So thanks very much for Sorinco and Hux to actually get that over the line. But importantly, the things that I'm going to cover now is the upcoming changes to the NIM node binaries and reward system. So mid-November, that means already next week, we're finally going live with the naive 5-layer rewarding. So this release is scheduled currently for the 12th of November. It's called Magura, and I want you all to pay attention. It's going to be a lot of coordination around the Magura release because it has a lot of quite important changes and actions that need to happen. So we're going to cover that shortly. End of November, so following very closely after the Magura release, we have the Crunch release, which is effectively naive rewarding plus. So we've got a few more kind of improvements to the reward system coming out then. In December is when the NIM rebrand happens and the NIM VPN early bird launch takes place. And then finally in 2025, early 2025, we should see fair network usage and fair rewarding. So this is effectively the full NIM token economics in action. We have users paying for the NIM VPN via subscriptions. Those subscriptions are feeding into a buy order that gets triggered on the market. That buy order buys NIM tokens that are then used to reward operators. So we see this full virtuous cycle here. So that's what we're all really looking forward to. Next slide, please. So step by step, what is going to happen next week? So this is the Magura release. It's a very big release, and it will be implementing what we're calling naive rewarding. Why are we doing these changes? The aims here is to onboard gateways into the reward set and actually have gateways receive staking as part of their node selection process. And to call outdated nodes. So what's happening in the Magura release is we're implementing naive rewarding, and we're calling it naive because it does not take into account real usage of the network quite yet. It's simply taking the 2% mixed mining emissions rewarding that you're all used to already and dividing it, instead of across 3 layers of mixed nodes, 5 layers of nodes to include the entry and exit gateways. This division across these layers is going to be an equal division for the time being. In the next phase, we're going to be dividing it according to the percentages that some of you will have voted for earlier this summer. So we'll get a little bit of a kind of premium for exit gateways. We're not doing that quite yet because exit gateways are still going to be bootstrapped via service grants. So effectively, what's going to happen is we have 2% mixed mining emissions. It's going to be divided across 5 layers. Nodes running in exit gateway mode will also serve as DVPN nodes for the NIM VPN, as is currently taking place. The DVPN work will continue to be awarded via service grants. So this is a key part of Project Smoosh. We are going to need all of you to upgrade your nodes fairly quickly to the Magura, or at minimum to run NIM node binaries. So not separate gateway or mixed node. If you're not running NIM node binaries, you will not be included in the reward set. This is important. So this is effectively to cull a lot of the outdated nodes that are inactive. People aren't maintaining them. They've kind of disappeared from the project, etc. So we just have top quality nodes that are actually running the network. Another important change is that config scores are now going to also be part of the selection process. So effectively, instead of it just being stake and performance that matters for you to be included in the active set, your config score is also going to matter. Those of you who've been working very closely with Sorinco and the rest of the team are already quite used to this from Harbor Master. So it's not going to look much different to that. Config scores effectively just mean that you're running, the NIM node, the latest binary, and importantly also that you've agreed to the terms and conditions of running a NIM node. Again, why are terms and conditions important? We covered that in the last town hall. They're important because our promise as a company and as a network and as a decentralized system is that we don't gather logs on our users, and the terms and conditions is a legal guarantee of that. So it's quite important that we have you guys on board with that. this effectively needs that all these changes effectively mean that all nodes will need stake to be selected for work and to be included in the reward set. So this is new for people who have only been running gateways so far. So in order to help gateways acquire stake, people that are on the service grants program will be onboarded directly onto the delegations program so that you can get stake and get into the active set immediately. So Sarinko will be helping you guys out with that. Sarinko and Merv. In terms of selection into the active set, again, as I said, what matters here is the config score, the total stake, and the performance to the power of 20. So performance really weighs highly here, right? But your config scores need to be in order. You need to have good stake as well. Entry gateways get selected first, then exit gateways, and then mixed nodes. And finally, again, WireGuard DVPN services rewards here will continue as they are currently via service grants. So these are the immediate changes that are happening next week. So please do pay attention here. Have a think about it. We'll send these slides out again. And you can ask some questions in the next few days if you need to know more details. Next slide, please. Good. So very shortly after the Magura release comes the Crunch release. There's not huge changes here, but it will happen just a couple of weeks later. We'll see how much we can get implemented by then. But the aim here really is to enable NIM nodes to run in any mode. So in the initial naive version, you still have to choose, if you want to run in gateway or exit gateway, entry gateway, or mixed node mode. With naive plus, you can run in any mode that you select. So you can either just say, yes, I'm happy to do any and all of the work, or I prefer to only be an entry gateway and mixed node, or I prefer to only be an exit gateway or mixed node. We, of course, recommend that everybody is up for the full spectrum of work. It increases the likelihood of getting rewards, and it also gives us better information of the current capacity of the network. So that's the kind of main important information for the Crunch release. There's going to be other changes coming out then too. We are likely going to implement a kind of algorithm that diminishes rewards exponentially for running outdated binaries. So that means if you're fully up to date with your binaries, you will be receiving good rewards. If you start to lag behind, your rewards will start diminishing. So your likelihood of being selected and your rewards will start diminishing exponentially. This is to make sure that the network is always up to scratch. Other changes, gateways will have an IPv6 listener. The network monitor version 2 will come out. This includes network monitoring for DVPN WireGuard services. And I'm also very excited to say that we will be releasing an Explorer version 2 within the next month or two as well. I think that's going to make everyone's lives a lot easier. It should help all of you get an overview of your rewards and node statuses much more easily, even on your mobile device. So hopefully this should help both stakers and operators significantly as well. Next slide, please. So this is just a table view of what I've already mentioned. NIM nodes in the naive version are effectively smooshed binaries. And where the reward pool is coming from mixed mining emissions still. The reward set remains the same. So that's 240 nodes selected every epoch to run both MixNet and WireGuard services. And all exit gateways are also DVPN nodes, as is currently happening. Rewarding is split equally across 5 layers, and DVPN work is rewarded via service grants. Next slide, please. The slow motion slideshow here. Yeah, this is just another table view just to make it a little bit more clear how reward happens for mixed network versus DVPN work. Next slide. So those are the changes that are going to happen this year. So that's mid-November and end of November, moving into early December. Next year, as real world value payments are starting to come in for the NIM VPN application, we're going to move towards what we're calling a fair usage, fair reward system, and this basically ties rewards directly to usage via a ticket system. So, tickets effectively represent real world usage of bandwidth of the network. And we'll have those tickets being collected by gateways, both entry and exit. And those tickets represent what is then owed to those nodes for rewards. Next slide, please. So I've got a very pixelated screen here. Yeah, so effectively the reward pool changes at that point, right? So we're moving from a kind of bootstrapping phase, which is effectively the mixed mining pool, towards a real world paid mixnet phase, where the mixed mining pool will be boosted by user fees coming in as well. So effectively the reward pool will comprise both mixed mining emissions and user fees increasingly as the network gains users. The reward set is also going to change radically. So instead of having an artificial limit on the reward set of 240 nodes as it is now, we're going to have a limitless reward set. So we can have as many DVPN gateways as there is interest. So anybody can spin up a DVPN gateway. That gateway gets rewarded on the basis of tickets collected from actual users using their gateway. The mixnet will also have a dynamic width. We'll carry on starting at 240, but as mixnet usage expands, that will also expand. And as mentioned before, config score will be a kind of part of the node selection algorithm here for the mixnet. The reward pool distribution will be based on tickets, as mentioned, tickets representing real-world usage. For mixed network, all user tickets will be gathered and put in a reward pool, and then distributed across entry gateways, mixed nodes, and exit gateways according to the percentages that you guys voted on. So that's 16% of the reward pool being distributed to entry gateways, 3 times 16 to mixed nodes, and 36 to exit gateways at a premium for the extra kind of load and risk that they represent. WireGuard work, on the other hand, is much more kind of competitive. So that's purely based on user of that specific gateway. And again, here we have a premium of 67% going to exit gateways versus 33% going to entry gateways. We're going to continue our support programs moving into next year. So service grants are not going away. Delegations program is also going to continue. And that's because every time, we're moving into a new market and, we have new users of the NIM VPN, we're going to need to bootstrap gateways fairly quickly, or NIM nodes fairly quickly. And our grants program enable us to do that so that we can actually direct the scaling of the network and the geographies of the network in close collaboration with you guys, the operators. Next slide, please. Yep, so this is just a table view. And again, this is a preview of the fair usage, fair reward system. So a lot of the details are still being worked out. Things like how much bandwidth does a ticket represent, how much NIM does that represent, etc. We will be giving you guys much more detailed formulas and calculations as we get closer to the fair usage, fair rewards implementation. But I wanted to give you guys a heads up so you understand the high level thinking here. Next slide. So just to recap when these changes are taking place, obviously right now we're doing the town hall. As I mentioned, we'll share these slides afterwards with a summary and a little bit more detail. The Magura release, which is the naive 5-layer rewarding, is happening next week in mid-November. Sarinko will be doing an AMA, and what needs to happen then is everyone who wants to remain in the active set have to migrate to a NIM node via the wallet, and service grantees will be onboarded onto the Delegations program so they can get stake immediately, and then the 5-layer rewarding kicks in. End of November, we've got the Crunch release. This is where you can then choose to run the NIM node in any mode. And we're also going to launch a version 2 of the service grants program at that point. There's going to be lots of interesting new developments there. We'll have much clearer understanding of the machine specs that we need to have running, and the locations that we need for gateways leading up to the VPN launch. So that's going to be a very active time as well. This is going to be just before the NIM VPN early bird launch in December. So this is a very key date and going to be very important for getting all our users as well. After that, we're going to have rolling improvements and optimization of the app, and we're going to be keeping a very close eye on how rewards are playing out. The NIM Explorer version 2, which I like to think of as Harbor Master Bling, is going to come out, and that allows you all to see a little bit better your ongoing performance of your nodes, and also your rewards in one place. And it will help us, the team, also keep an eye on rewards and see how all these changes to the reward token economics and reward algorithm are actually playing out in the real world. There's lots and lots of factors here to keep an eye on, everything from the token price to the kind of slight change in distribution that we expect when we do the 5-layer rewarding, with more rewards going to gateways. And then, of course, in 2025, the general launch of the NIM VPN and fair usage, which is effectively ticket-based rewarding, as mentioned. Next slide, please. So yeah, just a high-level recap and reminder. Running a NIM node. So NIM nodes are obviously far more than VPN servers. The NIM network is not just a VPN. We are a noise-generating mixnet, and in fact, the first of its kind in the world. NIM nodes are running a multi-purpose network serving both a DVPN and a noise-generating mixnet. So this is very, very unique. Our aim with all of these changes and the final vision for NIM node rewards is that NIM nodes are rewarded fairly, that you guys can make a profit, and that it's actually desirable to run a business as a NIM infrastructure provider. We also would like to create a genuinely thriving and independent professional community of operators. So we already have our forum. We're already running the regular AMAs. Ideally, next year, we want to see much more operator meetups so people can actually get to know each other a little bit more in person. All of this helps also to ensure that the network stays secure and resilient going forward, and also becomes increasingly decentralized and independent from core team. It would also be fantastic if we can manage to work together to have our first NIM Node Summit next year. I think that could be very, very exciting. Obviously, NIM nodes will continue to be supported by the NIM core team. So as I mentioned, we'll continue our service grants and delegations program. We're working very hard to improve our APIs. I know that's been a huge pain point for a lot of you, seeing breaking changes without getting a heads up. We are trying to do better. We're getting our APIs much more production ready, much more stable, and also improving our tooling like the Explorer v2. Finally, this is such a historical moment for the NIM network. We're moving into this kind of paid phase where we're closing the cycle on the NIM token economics. And what we're really also looking forward to seeing is increasing usage of the NIM network, and also growing capacity and numbers of the NIM nodes. So there's lots and lots of potential around running a NIM node, including developing, bespoke services, and lots of kind of new developments coming down the line also from our R&D team, including post-quantum keys, censorship-resistant gateways, trusted execution environments. So there's lots and lots of things that are going to be happening next year to improve the overall capacity of the network and to work very closely with you guys in implementing these changes. So that's all from me. Happy to take questions. Don't be shy if you're not quite ready or don't know what to ask. I will be available for any questions over the next few days or just in general. And we will be sharing this deck, so you can have a think about it as well.
Thanks for the presentation, boss. I'm gonna put us back on screen like so. And sorry for the slow reaction, guys. You need to understand that this is an intercontinental call, so we have, I think, about 8 time zones separating us. That's why the latency is so high. I promise I was switching slides immediately, even though it looked kind of painfully slow. All right, so first question is not operator or network related. Do you want to still take it, Jaya? It's about
Of course.
NVPN. All right, so question from EY. Nice name, and thanks for the question. What developments will happen regarding VPN in the near future?
Well, so obviously, we have the early bird launch happening in December, and that's where, effectively, the NIM VPN is launched to market. And that means we're gonna, there's so many kind of firsts happening in that launch. It's the first time that ZK NIMs go live as well. We're enabling a privacy preserving payment system for the VPN. The VPN is the very first of its kind to have a noise generating mixnet. So that's kind of our first major milestone that's coming up on the VPN side. Very soon after that, a big focus for us is censorship resistance. It's increasingly a huge topic, not just around the US elections, but also more generally. And then we have some of the major R&D topics that I mentioned already. So that's post-quantum keys, trusted execution environment. That is happening over the course of next year. And then we're looking at features like, split tunneling as well. So people can actually start to, decide what traffic they want to have running through the mixnet or the noise generating mixnet versus the 2-hop DVPN mode. We expect that to be quite popular because, I think most people that have used privacy preserving technologies in the past, have this experience that certain things can be quite clunky if they're not used for the right use cases. And there's very specific use cases that the noise generating mixnet is very, very good for, things like crypto transactions or emailing or messaging. But then there's other use cases that the DVPN is better for, things like streaming and so on. So split tunneling will really, radically improve the UX overall of the NIM VPN.
Yep, agreed. Me personally, I'm also looking forward to split tunneling the most, probably. It's gonna be absolutely awesome. All right, next question is from Rocio. Let's make it a quick fire one, if we can. Thanks for the question, Rocio. As always, 1 ticket equals 1 NIM, right? It's okay. Maybe we can't actually take it quick fire because it's kind of it's a deceptively complicated question.
Yeah, it is a deceptively complicated question. In short, yes, but I'm kind of saying that with a slow yes because there's a variety of things that need to be looked at in a little bit more detail here. Whether NIM 1 ticket should equal an X amount of NIM or X share of NIM reward pool is still like a kind of major question that we're looking at in Claudia's modeling. So we'll get back to you on that for the fair usage. Next one.
All right, next question is from Matt. Thanks for the question. Is there any plan for high bond saturation to give any advantage to DVPN 2-hop WireGuard nodes regarding collection of tickets or usage?
Let me just see if I've fully understood that question. So what you mean is if highly saturated nodes will be 2-hop DVPN nodes? Is that what you're?
Yeah. So the question is whether
So actually,
sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So the question is whether stake saturation will affect rewards when it comes to DVPN traffic. and bond?
No, actually, it will matter less. So for DVPNs, like as long as you pass kind of basic eligibility criteria, stake saturation won't matter. Effectively, in the final version, I mean, it will matter initially in the naive version, but in the final fair usage, fair reward system, all nodes in the network are DVPN nodes if they meet basic eligibility requirements to be in the reward set. And the eligibility requirements are fundamentally just that you're live, you're running the correct config, and have a high performance score. Otherwise, that's it. So it's the way to think about it is that's kind of like your, on the one hand, it'll be like your base level income, it's always accessible, but on the other hand, it's going to be much more competitive because you're going to need to make sure that your DVPN gateway is in a location that has high user demand, because your DVPN rewards are based purely on tickets that you're gathering.
Excellent. Thanks for that answer.
We might be talking about two things though, because one is to get to the eligibility set, another one is the size of the reward itself once you actually ticketing. And I wouldn't put my hand to the fire on like the very, very final things, but I think the stake saturation might play a role in the second, which is the reward itself calculation. However, a little bit of a FOMO building. Now, when we have the new docs out, the next step is to build tokenomics pages on those new docs. So I would, Matthew Bo and before Supermea, or who was asking, maybe wait for those docs and then follow up town hall on exactly that topic.
Thanks for that answer, guys. Next up, we have two more questions. I think this one is actually for you, Sirinko. So I'll ask it from you. Will the current gateways and mixed nodes support the network load, mix and users, or do you plan to increase the number of nodes of their requirements for the early bird launch?
That sounds like a bridge to the second section of this presentation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I can give a short answer, or I can just go to it and answer that in presented points if you want.
No, I would say, friends, stick around. We're going to answer your question in detail with Sirinko's presentation. But for now, let's move on to the last question on Jaya's bit. Also from Matt. Is there any plan to add load balancing to the VPN to make sure multiple users don't get auto-connected to one gateway with low bandwidth versus one gateway with high bandwidth?
Yes. What that load balancing exactly will look like, I can't tell you at this point, but absolutely, this is in the plans. There's a kind of variety of things that are being looked at for that, including having the client have some level of memory in terms of successful or unsuccessful connections, all the way through to improved node status API network monitors. So I can't give you a kind of super clear answer to that other than like, yes, some version of load balancing is in the pipeline.
Thanks for that. And actually, we have one more question, sorry, from Notes Hub for this section before we move on. Thanks for the question, friend. In the slides, you said on the second release, we can run nym node in any mode, mixnet or gateway. Can you shed more light on it? We're doing that, we're doing that, don't we, by selecting the mode?
Yeah, so what I meant there is that, so currently you're selecting either or. So you're either, selecting you're basically either a gateway or you're a mixed node. With the second release, Crunch, it's basically, you can say I'm open to running anything, and then you'll be running anything. So that's all that's involved with.
There is a likelihood that you will have a progression in between, that you will be choosing between entry gateway and mixed node versus exit gateway, and then the next one we will put all together and let it just for the algorithm. But this is all in a development as well.
Right, excellent. Keep the questions coming, folks. We're going to be doing a Q&A after Sirinko's segment as well. Is there anything else to add, or should we move on to the next section?
No, I think we can move on.
Okay. Screen coming, and Sirinko, take it away.
All right, I'll wait for the screen, or shall I make my own screen here? Oh, here we go. Yeah, so 5th of November, and we just had the end of October, right? If you with me, you celebrate it somehow. Maybe you call it different ways. Maybe you plug it somewhere around of this time of the year. It doesn't have to be the date. However, those of you who do understand that philosophy of life doesn't end with death, but it's a cycle. And sometimes we need to understand death as the beginning of something. Things need to die off for other things to have space for life. And same with systems, right? Sometimes you gotta break it, get away, get rid of, to be having space for building a new one. And so we do with development of this software as well. Next slide, please. And there is a large change coming up with the API system as we knew it. Here's the link, if you can share it, please. Next slide. To the API system and the queries and stuff like that. I'm sharing here a little link. It's also down here to this pull request. I'll do a proper documentation about that as well, coming out around the Magura release. So it's gonna be all very used to it. Nimtech.net now /docs/operators/changelog. And I'll share it in all the channels as well. However, you can get a very well detailed written changes by Andrew, a leading dev, on this pull request being shared here. I took this quote because I found it lovely, that all concepts of node families got purged, removed, deleted, thrown into the abyss. They simply no longer exist, and the world is all better for it. That is one of the things of many changes which are coming together with the APIs break-in, that we no longer gonna do node families because so few people were using them. It brought difficulties into these changes into rewarding we were talking about, and basically too much maintenance for too little of fun, so to speak, right? Too much money for too little music. So I just found this sentence really nice. Next slide. But to really dive deep on what does that mean for operators, and again, if you are devs and if you're running, you run applications, or you pulling you query any of our APIs, or use that for your work, for your UIs and whatever, just come to the, read the pull request. It's described there, and come to our channels and hang out there with me and Max, who, by the way, I want to give a shout out on the new docs. Jai mentioned hacks, which is true. He helped us with UX, but Max did really a lot of legwork out there. So big shout out to Max. Max, if you're listening, thank you very much once more. Come to the dev channel, hang out there with me and Max, and talk about the APIs in depth. But here on this, talk about them from the operator point of view. That means that, first of all, except removing node families, which I already talked about, we're gonna introduce nim nodes as a new thing into the mixnet contract. That means that from now on, even though we have nim nodes on a binary side of operation, on the Nix bonding side and the settings in a wallet, you all know that you're going either through bonding as a mix node or as a gateway. That no longer is gonna exist. We're gonna have a nim node, or they both gonna exist parallelly for a bit, but we're gonna introduce a new nim node thing to bond through to the mixnet contract. For those of you who are running now a nim node already, you will need to migrate or make this transition in the wallet, which there'll be new wallet release, and this will exist there as well. We also gonna do a thing that the new APIs which are gonna come out are only gonna be returning data to and from the new nodes, while the old APIs will only be communicating with the legacy nodes. So yes, as Jas said, you will need to have a nim node and terms and conditions accepted to be able to even be considered to be part of the active set, but eventually you will need to have a nim node, Magura, or higher to be even able to communicate with those APIs when that is gonna get switched. which again, I think is a welcome breaking change, because that will put away anyone who just have a good state saturation and upgraded their node for months and taken a place in the active set, therefore making the network less strong, less robust, and taking place for those of you who actually been, following, coordinating, upgrading, and being actually active operators. These nodes will become irrelevant and will not be able to be part of the topology of the network. When we will be bonding, there'll be very minimalistic bare info provided by the operators. There will be host, that's your IP or host name, identity key, and HTTP port, which we default now, even though it's customizable, I'll say it here loud, to 8080. Those are the only things we're gonna announce to the validator when bonding. All the rest of APIs will be self-described. Okay, that allows us maximum flexibility, the operators as well, and that includes even things like the Sphinx key, which up until now was actually described to the validator through bonding. And that's for having the ability to be able to switch modes of your node while having the same delegation. So you're gonna be bonded with the same account as a NIM node, while on the binary side, as Jara mentioned, you'll be able to be switching between entry gateway, mix node, and exit gateway, or run all of those or some of those at once. So that allows us, these changes in the end allows us the very key feature which was mentioned, that any node of NIM node can be delegated on and therefore rewarded. I'm now gonna be starting to write the documentation on that, to be having it published and out together with Magura release and changelog, as always, as you used to it. At worst, a day or two later, as it sometimes happens. Next slide, please. So new APIs and operators, to just summarize what you need to do. The Smoosh, which we're finalizing, and it's to take the legacy binaries into one, which already did happen for a large part. Now it's happening on the smart contract side of things. And the API changes, they have some effects on the operators, of course. So to summarize what you as operators need to do to be able to take part of in the network topology, therefore being able to take any rewards, delegations, is to begin with these three. One, every NIM node will have to migrate in a smart contract from mixed node or gateway, as it's now, to the NIM node. That is done through the next release of NIM wallet. There'll be a button which you click, and you're gonna migrate to the new smart contract. Two, every node to be able to communicate with the APIs, and at the same time also having this enough config score for being taken into the active set, will need to be running Magura release and newer, so from Magura onwards. Not only because there is this config for NIM nodes in general, but also because you need to communicate with the APIs. And three, as it's been mentioned, but I'll repeat it explicitly, all nodes have to have the flag -- terms and conditions accepted with every run command. Okay, there is nothing in config like we have descriptions, we have different ports, we have location, what have you. You all know your config.toml file. There is nothing like terms and conditions accepted true or anything like that, exactly because there is a must for this to come into action, that with every run command you actually append this flag to the end of your command. If you follow these three, you'll be eligible to be part of the active set, part of getting rewards. Next slide, please. And now we're coming to some of the open questions, or like take over from where Jaya started, but also next slide, please. Also to this part will be helping me to answer the question Jeleva brought before. So listen well here, because we will definitely address that. We are running delegations program. That's giving some like that's a program to, there are some rules, which if Suda or somebody can please share the landing page, because the rules are there. And if operators running nodes follow these rules, they can be taken into the delegation program. What it means that we delegate 250,000 NIM tokens on top of your node, which gives you some like baseline eligibility to be actually included in the active set and have the upcoming NIM VPN usage coming through your node, right? If people run them. This is for the unknown mode, of course, because for now, we were only using delegation program for mixed node mode of NIM nodes. That's gonna change. Currently, we are delegating 242 nodes. We expanded, and it's dynamic. So there is not something like, oh, in 6 months we're gonna have this one date when we're gonna do this change. Now it's dynamically bi-weekly selection, when anytime somebody doesn't follow the rules within the time frame which the rules also define, we basically remove them from the delegation program. That makes an empty spot, and we have first in, first out kind of like a selection that the people who are in a queue. I mean, those of you who now see the link, you can sign in into a queue. We have brilliant mentors. They also hang out in a channel. That's Merv, Wingsel Notes, John Smith, and Supermea. We also in multiple languages. They will review your node, see if you get the specs, which are the rules, the terms and conditions, the config, the performance, if you get the quotas for the operation and profit margin cost and these type of things, and add you then as eligible one to the waiting queue. And once somebody is out, you will get in within 2 weeks if that happens. So that works pretty well. Suda did an amazing work together with the mentors before, with Pawnflake, with many others, and now we gave it this like a dynamic wheel on which we basically updating the program every 2 weeks. We will expand this list away from mixed nodes only to all the type of nodes, because now we can delegate on any type of nodes after Magura. That means that we will add gateways to the queue as well. So get ready for queuing to delegation program with your gateways as well. Next slide, please. Also, when there will be allowance to run multiple nodes, the rule will change, as we've been since the very, very beginning of delegation program very clear about, that the nodes which will be to stay in delegation program will be expected to run multiple nodes, right? Then we have a service grant program. How does that differ? Well, up until now, we couldn't delegate on gateways, while they actually are more costly because they need to be running on better services. Also, operators having bigger exposure when running their NIM node as an exit gateway. There is much more work and higher skill sets to be expected for the administration. So it was quite unfair that mixed nodes can get delegations, the people running as gateways couldn't. And even with the current delegation program, which they'll be included, as I just said, it wouldn't be really enough to cover all the infrastructure and the efforts. So we're running this service grant program when we grant some number of operators. Now currently it's 94 nodes who run actually exit gateways. I was told my connection's lost. Is it me or is it the screen?
What are you seeing?
Oops, connection got lost, reconnecting. But I think it's your screen, so that's fine. These nodes are really the backbone of NIM VPN routing, and it's really important for us to bootstrap the network. Please, next slide. Therefore, we are drafting Service Grant Program version 2, because as Jleva, I'm sorry if I can't spell your name well, asked, we are unsure that the current state of the network would hold all those users and all the traffic we would want. Therefore, we're gonna size up the service grant program, but also have bigger demands on the type of servers and that type of services we're expecting. We've been running, to go a little bit deeper on your question, but I think many operators are actually interested in hearing this. We've been running tests, now another round of something we call fast and furious. This means that we spin multiple clients in different locations, in VPN CLIs, and we send, download, and upload loads of traffic through all the different gateways. We did this now in addition of WireGuard, so we only did it through the WireGuard gateways. And we measure, if what's happening, and trying to get as much data as possible to help us to basically formalize new spec requirements for those machines. What happened is that we figure out that we had some issues on our software, which means we couldn't really create exact new specs just yet, but it's great and it's very valuable because we could have simulate a real network traffic and getting a feedback on what we need to change on the development side of things. That's actually brilliant, and that's what Magura is bringing about. That's these panics you could have seen on your gateway, the authenticator problem, the timeouts, things like that. But we do know, while we clarifying the cores and the memory RAM, that unlimited bandwidth, unmetered unlimited bandwidth, and port speed of 1 gigabit per second will be a must for running a solid WireGuard node. And that's also gonna be the minimum requirement for becoming a part of Service Grant version 2. So that's kind of a side long, but an answer also to your question we had before, I hope. Therefore, we will be demanding having more specs, better configuration. There'll be new rules and general higher, better level of coordination with myself and with the mentors, with NIM in general. But we will also then change the size of the grant, the size of the rewards. I'm not gonna put the numbers straight here because the way we imagine that is gonna be dynamic. So there'll be 130 slots in total. As I said before, now we are running 94. And these 130 slots we will first offer to those of you who are already current grantees. So we can count with something like 40 extra left. I'm not expecting that all the current grantees, I very much hope to, but I can't bet on that. We'll take it, but something 40 or more slots more will be offered to long-term operators who've been around us, different squads and entities. And last but not least, to skilled entities who are able to actually professional orchestrate multiple nodes at once. And that takes the communication overhead, and that makes the changes going a little bit quicker. We got some squads already in a service grant program, and these people do always this extra mile, helping with docs, helping with research, or being able to change 10, 15 nodes at once, which is really helpful for us. So offers can be proposed. I'm expecting those. I'll share locations and info soon. I already have some queue of people who, not just because they wrote faster than you listening now, but people who've been around and doing massive contribution and show their interest to be running nodes. But just before you're gonna be sending me DMs or a post in chat, I wanna make one thing clear, that what we're doing here really is we aiming to bootstrap the network before we offer anyone to pay for that, right? Because we have a chicken and egg problem. The more users come, the more tickets will be issued, the more rewards come, the less grants are needed. But at the same time, the more users come, the better the network should be in the first place, and we cannot wait for ask somebody to pay us money without having that network being actually like really robust and anti-fragile to begin with. So what we're really doing is not easy work, set and forget for a lot of profit here. If that's something you're aiming for, this might not be the program for you. But we want to help operators to cover their cost for quality infrastructure and help them to position themselves for the upcoming rewards flow. So that's the mentality we're looking for, and we're also very happy to then help people with that. But again, all the locations, data, numbers, soon we're gonna scope that out before the end of this month. And the last slide, please. So as I said, when we're gonna have Service Grant version 2, the end of November, all nodes in that will also be delegated on top of that. So the delegation stake will help people in getting the selection and being able to earn more rewards, while the grant will continue until the nodes are actually sufficiently rewarded from the usage of the network. And I believe this has been all from me.
Cool. So on that note, Marabusco is asking, as I understand now, in the delegations program, I must run the gateway too. To be part of the delegations program, you have to run the NIM node, so the smooshed binary, but you can still choose if you want to run, a mixed node and a gateway, or just a mixed node, etc. So we're still leaving it up to you guys to decide, like, just how much of the services you want to actually participate in. Again, as we mentioned, we highly recommend that you're available to run all the different services, including gateway services, but it's not a requirement for the delegations program quite yet. That will come later down the line, though. Moving into next year, the vision really is that everybody's servicing the DVPN network if they're, meet basic performance eligibility requirements. And that everyone is also available to potentially serve the mixnet as a gateway or a mixed node, as and when necessary, but only the top performing nodes will have that additional income coming in. So for now, if you're part of the delegations program, you need to run the NIM node. That NIM node can be in just mixed node mode, though.
Jaya is taking away my job. It's unacceptable. I'm doing the Q&A here, boss.
Let's go then.
We only have 2 more questions. One of them is from Matt. Thanks for another great question. Any idea when the new Swagger will be accessible for the API changes, so we can see the responses and types expected?
I would assume by the end of this week. I very much hope. But let me clarify and come back to you, Matthew.
Sounds excellent. That was a quick one. And the last question is from Rocio. Thanks for another great question. Will the specifications for mixed nodes and gateways be different? How will this be managed with the ability to switch modes in Smoosh? Good question.
Specifications, you mean the minimal expected requirements? Well, basically, I think that if you running, say, a mixed node now, and that's what you want to keep doing, you will be fine with what's there now. Then I will basically make new specs listed in the introduction and the documentation where they are now, and I'll clear that out. That, like, if this is what you're up to, for example, the version where you are only entry and a mixed node, this will be fine for you to run. But if you want to be running as exit as well, this is what should be expected for you to run. And if you're not gonna follow that up, that would means that we will have basically part of the configuration will be that the clients will be checking if you can run a good service as like an exit gateway and as exit WireGuard gateway. And if not, you will not have eligibility for that selection. So you will be able to expose yourself as like everything you want, but if your node is gonna be too underqualified for doing so, the network will quickly figure out and will not ever give you actually that position.
All right, we have a good bonus question actually, which I think is an important one, Sarinko. This one's also from Marabusco. Thanks for the question. Will the API changes destroy my existing Grafana dashboard? Multiple smileys. Will they?
Marabusco, my friend, I don't know what's your Grafana dashboard based on. It's kind of a question like if the weather tomorrow will change my dinner, but it might. Very likely it might, yes. But there is a great community of operators who will be happy to help you. Depends if you're running a Grafana dashboard which is looking on a performance of your server as like the load of your server, that most likely will not. But if you're running a Grafana dashboard, excuse my French, which is looking into performance of your node as on a network routing and these type of things, then it most likely will.
So in exciting news, we're working hard here in the background on what we're calling a data observatory, which is going to have production-ready stable APIs. So hopefully that's also going to be something that you all can get excited about over the next few months, and we can start seeing more community-run dashboards, etc. as well.
Exactly. And that brings us to the end of the questions and also to the end of this call. Sorry guys for being or going over time. This was quite a bit to speed run through. This was a lot. So the deck will be shared with you guys on Matrix and Telegram as well, so you can dig into it. Please check again the links that we shared in the live chat. So we tried to drop a link to everything that was discussed as we were talking about it. The recording, of course, will be available on the NIM YouTube as always, so you can watch it back at any point. And let's keep the conversation going. So if you have any questions, then make sure to bring them to the Matrix operator chat or maybe on the general chat, and we're going to be keeping an eye there and answering all your questions. Big thanks to both of my guests for coming on. Any closing remarks, Jaya? I see that you were about.
Yeah, well, just to say, like, obviously we're going to continue doing the fantastic job that Sarinko and Merv have been doing, hosting AMAs every time we have a release. So don't worry, we are right here as these changes get implemented, working with you guys to see how they actually play out in the real world, and helping everything get over the line. And from the looks of it, we'll probably do another operator town hall fairly early in the new year, where we'll get Claudia on board as well and start looking at some of the more detail of the fair usage, fair rewarding scheme, and go into detail around how that's going to work with the ticket system and connecting up that real world usage with real world rewards. So lots to look forward to. Yeah.
Stay tuned for that, everyone.
Yeah. Besides of these events, come always to the channels. The mentors are brilliant and sharp. Me and Max is also often there. Sometimes devs comes. So anything like Marabusco you were asking and the questions of the others, sometimes we don't have the answers because it's to be seen or we don't know your particular setup. But I'm actually more than interested to then get the feedback and see more of like the actual numbers and actual information which is coming through. It helps us, it helps the community. And any constructive feedback is always welcome, be that on the documentation, the guides, or the software itself. So I'm looking forward to hear from more and hang out there with you all and with the technical community, with the operators.
Exactly, and that concludes our third. By the way, Jaya, I think this is you were spreading fake news earlier. This is the third operator town hall. So big thanks for listening to us, everyone. Hopefully, we answered at least some of your questions, and you know what's going to happen in the coming few weeks and months. If not, then make sure to bring the conversation to Matrix. And with all of that said, good night, have a nice day, nice afternoon, whatever it may be in your region.